Happy Sunday to you, folks, and welcome to Got Your Back Weekend Edition. Gager and Rishaug here in the Sherwood Park studios, ready to debrief an Oiler win against the Montreal Canadiens. Maybe gifted one a little bit last night. The Habs taking all those penalties. Hey, can't mess around with the Oiler power play. They did, and they got bit. And the Oilers have now won 4 out of their last 5 games, despite being so banged up. Not too shabby. Going to get to Joaquin, Gage in just a second, but first, we remind you that Got Your Back Short Shifts are brought to you by Mid-City Construction Management, a locally owned and operated family company specializing in civil construction projects for over 40 years, from roadways to excavation, underground utilities, paving, and concrete. They've played a massive role in the infrastructure of Edmonton for over 40 years, since 1980 in this surrounding area, and we're thrilled to have them as sponsors here on Got Your Back Short Shifts. As we say, a fine morning to my good friend Joaquin Gage. Gager, great to have you back on the podcast, buddy. It's been a little while.
Yeah, this is great. I'm glad it's you're still up and running, Ryan. It's great to see. I've listened to a few of these episodes. They're really good.
Thanks, my friend.
I don't know how you get Struddy up that early though.
I know. You know what?
Crazy.
It's not an issue for him. He is surprisingly an early bird. Like when I send the text out to set up our shoot times, I say like 6:15. He's like, "Yep, no problem." Like he never complains about how early it is. Zuby, our production guy in Kelowna, it's pretty painful for him though because he loses the hour. So that's like 5:15. I'm a little bit of a tyrant here because I like to get the early shoot time so we can get the podcast out early.
Yeah.
But, you sent me a funny note when I said, how's 8 o'clock Sunday? You said I might just be getting home, which I thought was interesting. I don't know what your post-game Saturday nights look like, my friend.
They used to be like that, Ryan. That's a reminiscing tweet, I think, mostly. But
back in the day.
It's usually right to bed, and it's nice for a 5 o'clock Oilers game. So it's on a Saturday, which is a nice early night.
You gotta love those early starts. Hey man, you can. Although they did have a morning skate yesterday. Sometimes the benefit for us media guys with the early starts is there's no morning skate that you have to go to. But they did have, both teams had availabilities yesterday morning, but still I love being done early and, get the chance to spend some time with the family even after the game. So anyways, listen, let's get to this game. So once again, Gage, we're sitting there watching that first period. The Oilers have like 16 minutes in. They got 3 shots on the board and you're kind of like, man, what's going on with this group? They just struggled to start games on time. And Montreal, I thought, came out and did a good job of kind of establishing what they wanted to establish. And then the second period hit, and they left their brains in the locker room, the Canadiens. And they put one of the deadliest power plays in the world on the power play for basically an entire period. Completely changed the dynamic of that game. The Oilers were gifted the gift of undisciplined play from the Habs.
Yeah, when I'm watching the first probably 10 minutes of the game, I was like, okay, this is okay. But then I really felt as if the Oilers were once again, Ryan, kind of feeling their way through the game and trying to figure out how it was going to go. And I realize that it's sometimes difficult with key personnel out of your lineup.
Yeah.
But a game against the Montreal Canadiens, which really the Oilers should win that game at home. I just feel there was an opportunity to establish their type of game and let the Montreal Canadiens try to match that intensity and execution level of how the Oilers are playing. I think we'll discuss a little bit about identity, but that it's something that I've seen through these first 20 games that it's just okay. How are we going to have to play here to win this game? I think they have to establish what type of team they are and let the other team try to adapt to them a little bit more rather than feeling through these games. It's a recipe for disaster once you get into February and March, right?
Yeah, well, let's get into that. I mean, there's lots more to talk about in this game, and we will, but we did discuss identity. And the way that it's showing itself is early in these games where they're coming out and they're going, pretty long stretches without any significant shots on net. It's not all about shots. You want quality shots. But still, when you look up at the score clock and the other team's at 12 or 13 and you're at 3 or 4, they don't come out and say, hey, here's how we're going to play tonight. This is what we're doing. They don't throw their game down on the ice and basically just challenge the other team, match it. They back their way into games. They kind of like, how tough is it going to be tonight? You know, and I'm not sure where that comes from, Gage. I don't know if it's a locker room thing. I don't know if it's a right before they go out on the ice thing. You know, I suggested earlier that maybe it has a little bit to do with personality. You know, the personalities of Mike Smith. You know, that's a guy that will probably fire guys up in the locker room. Who's the disruptor? Who's the goofball? Who's the guy that jokes around and has people laughing? Who's the, you know, this group, a bunch of really good guys, but I don't necessarily see a firecracker in there, especially with Evander Kane out.
Well, yeah, and you say Mike Smith, who was probably vocal, and I've played with guys, Ryan, that they're really vocal, but they're annoying. So it kind of gets under your skin, so you get a little fired up.
Right, that's exactly what I'm saying.
It's just a little, God, I hate when he says that, and they go take it out on the other team. But I don't know, there's just subtle little things, like a team that struggles for that first goal. I think the deferring to shoot the puck at a lot of times, and I mean, it's hard to tell Leon and Connor to shoot the puck more when they both get 4 points a night, right? But I think throughout the lineup, they don't shoot I think that's one way to get engaged in the game a little bit more, is getting it, because they do have the puck and good opportunities to shoot. And you saw with, I believe, the Canadians' second goal, it's just a shot with a guy going to the net, getting the rebound. There's no reason why the Oilers can't do things like that and generate offense and chaos. And I just think that's one of the areas that they need to improve on, especially a team that is looking to score first in games.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that trait and see if it continues, but it's definitely been consistent. Lots happened after that first period. Let's get to the Weiss Johnson soundbox. Connor McDavid postgame talking about not really liking the start, and in fact, not really liking the second period outside of the power plays, but then the qualities they displayed in their game in the third period. Here's McDavid.
I thought we were not very good for 40 minutes, and we were lucky to find ourselves up one, and kind of a weird game that way, but I thought our group did a really good job of playing a nice, solid, mature third period and not giving them anything, and anything we did get, Stu kind of shut it down, so I thought it was a real good third.
So we saw the story of the game in the second period there, Gager. Bad penalties by the Montreal Canadiens, just shot themselves in the foot big time against this Oiler team. Oilers worked their way on the strength of, some 5-on-3 play and a real strong power play. They build a lead, and then they cough it up. And it was almost predictable. Like, full disclosure, and I was being a little bit of a smart ass, but I was in the press box next to Arpon Basu, and it was the Oilers had a 2-goal lead, and I looked at him and said, so who do you think's going to get the overtime winner? Like, you just had this feeling, right, that this was not going to be a lead that they were able to hang on to, and they weren't. But then in the third period, as you heard McDavid talk about, they changed the style of their game and actually put a pretty mature game out on the ice. What did you like about what you saw in that third?
I found that their neutral zone defensive play was passive, really passive through the first two periods. There was a few instances where they forced the puck and were able to create turnovers. I felt that their up ice pressure, even though they went to like a 1-2-2, I felt like they were getting the puck out of the first player's hands, having to make a pass, and then almost setting little traps within the neutral zone, making it a lot tougher, making the zone entries a lot more difficult for the Montreal Canadiens than it was in the first two periods. And I love teams that play that way. It's almost playing offense defensively through that setting those traps, not giving the team any time and space. And you saw what happened. I know there was a little bit of a line change, but when the Oilers are buzzing in that neutral zone, when the other team has the puck, creating turnovers, their attack to re-attack against the team, especially when you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl.
Yeah, the counter.
Just the way that they can pass the puck quickly and the anticipation to go the other way offensively with those guys. You saw what happened on the goal, and that's what I liked. I think when you heard Connor McDavid talk about we were better in the third, that's one of their that could be an identity, I think, of this team that you really need to see, because if you look at the games, it seems like they just wait for teams to easy entries and then defend from their own zone. Like they have to start defending from each the offense, neutral, and the defensive zone, I think.
You mentioned Connor McDavid on that quick transition. A really nice breakaway goal. Is it just me, or is he pretty much a sure bet on breakaways so far this year? Like the combination of how fast his feet and his hands move, he seems to be giving goalies no chance. So we asked him about that post game as we go back to the Weiss Johnson soundbox on breakaways this year for 97.
Early in my career, it was an area of weakness and something that I needed to improve. And I think as my career's gone on, I think I've gotten better and better. Just comfortable being in that spot and just keeping it a little more simple, I think. Not to say that I can't make a nice move, but just being a little bit more simple with it.
I don't think the goalies feel like he's simplifying on breakaways. There's nothing simple about what McDavid is doing on those breakaways right now. He's not exactly shooting from the hash marks.
The key for
I thought that was funny.
It must be just frightening to a quick turnover because it happens so fast, and all of a sudden he's at the tops of the circles with the puck all alone, and you're still trying to cut down the angle for a shot. And you saw it in the last couple games where goalies it's impossible for them to match his speed coming back and defending, and they look like they're reaching or completely out of position. I mean, his hands and his ability to elevate the puck on either side, forehand or backhand, so tight in. He does seem like he's automatic in those situations. But on a normal breakaway, you can kind of, like, if it was a penalty shot, you can kind of judge it a little bit more. But when it happens that fast on a player like Connor McDavid, I don't know what I'd do as a goalie. Maybe just do the Hasek and just, dive and lay down and hope for the best.
Don't like the start, like the power play. Don't like blowing the lead, like the maturity they show in holding on to a second lead that they had in the third period. Lots of up and down from the Edmonton Oilers in that game last night. Other things that we notice. Philip Broberg, I thought it was a positive night for Broberg. I thought a night where he was used right till the end, and I think that's important. Made a nice play right at the end. Tiny little building blocks, Gager. He's not going to be a guy where there's a bunch of flash and dash and you're like, oh man, he's arrived. Little building blocks like last night. Well,
and you look at that mad scramble at the end of the game, Ryan, and you look at the personnel that was on there, and it was Bush and Broberg battling, and not only battling but winning those one-on-one battles in that scramble, right? And that is so key for a young defenseman to have the just having your coach have you out there and
give
having
you the
that
tap, yeah.
give you that opportunity. It goes, yeah, you're out there. Let's defend this league. That's huge for a young defenseman. So like you said, a little steps there of confidence and being out there and succeed, not only being out there in those situations, but succeeding in those situations. That's key.
Yeah, he had the one shift too. He got blown up twice in one shift. Did you see that? Where he goes behind the net. I don't know if it was Josh Anderson or who it was, but it was like, oh, he got hammered on the end boards, and then he got up and gathered himself and grabbed his stick, and like 2 seconds later, just boom, he got hammered again. And I was thinking, oh man, this is going to be ugly. But he finished his shift strong, came back after with a few strong shifts. Just going to check his minutes here as we're talking. Where's Philip Broberg? 12 minutes and 16 seconds, 4 blocked shots, little building blocks, and that is a building block game for him. Jesse Puljujärvi ends up credited with 8 hits, standing toe-to-toe with Arbor Jacki. I think I said that right.
Yeah.
That's not, everyone saw the couple of scraps he's had this year. Puljujärvi is playing the game with an intention to be physical that is making him highly playable right now. He's not getting much done offensively. We all know that. But he's highly playable because he's going out there with the intention to get something done every shift. And if it's finishing a check, he finishes a check. And that's more than you can say for a number of other guys that have been in this lineup regularly.
Yeah, there's too many flybys for my liking. Whereas you see, he's finishing a lot of those checks, and I was trying to find the right words to describe his game. It's a little reckless abandon, I think. And I always think, oh man, it would be good if he got it in there after the scrums and was a little bit more physical, getting people's faces. But I think the fact that he's getting under people's skin the way he plays right now, and I think because
the accidental agitator,
he's a he's a little bit out of control, and so, and I mean, I know when you play men's league, Ryan, and there's always that one guy that's just out of control, and you're just like, what are you doing? And so he's getting that from other players. So
just one sec here. I got to write this headline down. Gager compares Puljujarvi to men's league player. There you go. Men's league player. I'm going to totally podcast you. I'm making a headline out of that today.
But I love it.
Stay off Twitter.
It's driving people nuts. And I thought there was a thing that he can do in his game, and he's doing it. And I realized, like, God, he's getting under a lot of these people's skin because of the way he plays. So good for him. That's the way to stay in the lineup. And there's skill there too, Ryan. It does take some time, but it's a young man actually realizing what he can actually do with his size and his frame.
Yeah. Once again, would like to see Dylan Holloway used a little bit more. In last night's game, he was 7 minutes, 7 seconds. Basically went to 3 lines partway through and Woodcroft corrected me because I talked about the start of the third and cutting it down to 3 lines. And he said, well, we played 4 lines at the start of the third, but we saw they did cut it down. I see Dylan Holloway starting to second guess his instincts a little bit. There was one forecheck. You talk about swings. I mean, he had the D-man just dead to rights and completely just blew snow because he just turned around and panicked his way back up the ice the other way. I want to see this player play with his natural instinct, and I see him playing to try not to make mistakes, to be trusted and get on the ice, and I think it's carving away the confidence in his game. He's still giving them some decent minutes, and there's some decent looks here and there. On the whole, though, I view a guy that isn't playing with his natural instincts right now because he's just not getting a lot of ice time, and he's trying to figure out how to.
Yeah, and he's not only that, he has to figure out what type of player he has to be successful and relied upon by his coach at the NHL level. Just because you play a certain way throughout your whole career, sometimes that doesn't even work at the NHL. You have to adapt and do some different things. We talk about Broberg kind of with battles and getting blown up. And I think even Holloway said, NHL players are so strong. You think you work out all summer and you're strong, but there's another level that these guys have and the strength that you need to compete on a nightly basis. So there's a lot of learning, I think, that Holloway has yet to do. But we just don't know what type of player he's going to be yet. And we're just not going to find that out with 7 minutes a game. But it's also, I was thinking about this last night too, and it's also a huge opportunity for him, right? Mm-hmm. Like he has an opportunity every night to show something special. Yep. So it's a little bit on him to grab the bull by the horns and do something special. I don't know what that is. I remember Ryan Smith. Ryan Smith was a very skilled junior player who wasn't playing his first year, and we were in Tampa. He went into the lineup, and a guy came across the middle, and Smitty blew him up. Yeah. There was pads, sticks, shin pads. He got a regular shift the rest of the game after that from playing, probably 6-7 minutes, and it never stopped. And he added a little bit of physicality more to his game, and we saw the career that he had. So there's little moments like that, I think, that we can look for from young Dylan Holloway.
Last point I'll make on Holloway here. I don't want to say fair. He's getting NHL games and minutes, and I'm sure he's thrilled to be here. I think it's a mistake to consistently put him on a line where he's basically the best player on the line. I just don't think you take a young player who's trying to work his way into this league, and no disrespect to his line mates, but he is. And I think he needs to play with better players. I think he needs to play next to veteran players that know how to handle different situations and can be on his line and chat with him on the bench. And I think he needs to be put in a situation where he can learn from his line mates. I think he should be on the Nugent-Hopkins Puljujarvi line. I think they missed an opportunity coming off that goal that he scored to put him in a position to build off of that confidence-wise, right? There was some shuffling that happened. And I think he's on a line right now consistently where he's supposed to be the driver. And I just don't think he's positioned confidence-wise, experience-wise to be that guy. Let's get back to the Weiss Johnson soundbox here because I've got the goaltender on the podcast. We have to talk goaltending. But first, we'll remind you this is a great time of year to put in a garage heater. If you don't have one, and Weiss Johnson can definitely help you out with that. Call Dennis and the crew over there. I just had one put in my garage, Gager, and man, it's a game changer. I had it in just in time for that -20 snap that we had. And the difference, like even in the morning, just walking out to the garage fridge to like grab whatever you need for breakfast and not absolutely freeze your arse off out there. My wife is happier, Randine's happier, getting into a nice toasty warm car. So give the crew at Weiss Johnson a call. If you don't have a garage heater and you want one, they got great products. The install crew is fantastic as well. They're at 5803 Roper Road. You can go visit them or give them a call, 780-463-3096. Jingle.
Weiss Johnson, Weiss Johnson, whoa.
Hey, man, we've all been listening to that for how many years? It's just like drilled into our heads.
Yeah, it's every time I pass the van, I'm probably
you say
saying
it in your head. Weiss Johnson. Yeah. Anyways, okay, let's get to the goaltending. So this is my read, but I want your read. Stuart Skinner won a game, and that's what he went in there to do, and that's what he went in there and did. But a few pucks were just shot past him. Like there were a few that were literally just shot right past him that had the Oilers lost that game, we'd be talking about a few weak ones from Stuart Skinner. So boy, does it ever go to show you win the game and the narrative can change. Like I thought he was good when he needed to be, but is it just me, Gage, or did some people just shoot pucks right past him?
Yeah, I didn't like the first one. I slowed that down. That went short side, correct? Yeah, and
between
hit
his
the
glove and the
middle
post,
bar.
I think. Yeah,
I think it glanced off, but I hated that goal from a guy on that side shooting from that angle. That should be he shouldn't be able to beat you short side like that. So I didn't like that one.
That was Suzuki's power play goal.
Yeah, I loved the Montreal second goal with the shot and the rebound, but when you're teaching young goalies, you want to get a stick on that to deflect it into the corner and get have better rebound control. I don't know if the puck, sometimes it can skip, right? Or it can just be, I don't know if it got up above the stick and just hit the pad, but I don't think he got his stick over to control it and just laid out that kind of
juicy so
rebound.
I want to ask you a question about that second goal because we were debating it in the press box. You tell me you've been there. How much can Stuart Skinner reasonably be expected to control the rebound to that shot? I mean, the guy spun and just wired one at him from just right by the hash mark kind of, just above the top, right by the top of the circle there. And I'm thinking, okay, that rebound didn't look great to me, but I mean, the guy uncorked one from in close. So is the expectation that a goalie do a better job with that rebound in particular, do you think?
On that particular side, yes, because that's the stick side of Stuart Skinner, and when it's a lot easier to get your stick on that puck and deflect it into the corner. Glove side's a little bit different, coming over with your stick, so it's a little bit harder, and a lot of the times you get that with the pad. Again, I think that puck kind of skipped, but it did look like it was close enough to the ice where he could have got his stick on, and then it's just a simple angle of your wrist and putting that puck, like you can smack it off the glass usually at that point. I liked how he got to the top of the crease and it was uncorked. Like that was a cannon.
Yeah.
But from that side, Ryan, a good NHL goalie should be able just to deflect that into the corner because he was in good enough position to use his stick. But so I didn't like that one, right? And then the Jack Eye shot that I think there was the little bit of traffic, but again, a stoppable puck, right? So
really, we're talking about 2 or 3 here that maybe we're like,
yeah. But and I watch his so there's 3 goals there that I guess we didn't like,
didn't love. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, so the wind takes a lot of that away. But there were also so many good things from Stuart Skinner in that game.
How about that puck move? How about that puck move on the power play, right? How confident a play is that?
Well, just the recognition to knowing the other team is the three guys. There's a D-man up in the rush. I'm getting this puck out of there because we're going back with two of the best players on the planet. That's unbelievable recognition by him. And I mean, I'm sure last year if we had Mike Smith, he would have joined the rush, right? In those kinds of situations. But
been up in the blue line, yeah.
Yeah. But great play by him there. And just I hated playing against goalies like Stuart Skinner because they were so technically good. Even in the if you watch that scramble, Ryan, most guys are flailing and reaching. He's bringing like his eye movement to track the puck. And I always tell when I'm working with young, like belly button to puck, you want to bring the whole package over and get in front of it. Right. And you watch and he's just square and set. And even when he's scrambling, he seemed like he was really under control. So didn't like the goals, but I liked what he's doing, and we're seeing a progression of a young goalie, not only starting to gain a little bit more confidence, but a guy that's playing back-to-back games and something to be. I don't think the Oilers have had a situation like this in a long, long time.
Homegrown guy that looks like they might be able to rely on a little bit here. Back to the Weiss Johnson soundbox. Here's Skinner on, well, the way things have gone for him recently. More starts, more ice time, and he's feeling it.
Yeah, I feel great. Body feels good. Mind feels good. Obviously, it's nice being in there, getting to play some games, get some more experience under my belt, and keep on learning and growing as an individual. At the same time, we got a lot of work to do. I got a lot of growth to keep on improving, and it's all about the win, so it's all about the next game now.
Yeah, Stuart Skinner definitely feeling it right now. Can we both agree he needs to play against the Washington Capitals as well? Oh
yeah, for sure. Just keep it rolling. It's always cool to play your first game against Montreal at home in your home building and realize that there's a lot of Montreal fans that live in Edmonton. It's a great atmosphere to win that game. Unbelievable opportunity. And now moving on to, I guarantee he's thinking about Ovechkin on that side. Like as goalies, we want to go up against the best and make them look skyward and go, what do I have to do to score on this guy, right? So another huge opportunity to shut down one of the greatest goal scorers of all time.
How would you handle the Campbell situation right now? Do you eyeball Arizona in a couple of days for him? Do you kind of, no matter what happens here against them, you look to get him in against Arizona coming through? Like, you can't just completely forget about him. You got to use him. But how would you handle him if you were them?
See, I wonder about Jack Campbell's mental state right now. We talk about this a lot. If you remember back at the beginning of the year, I think they threw Skinner against the St. Louis Blues, where it was like, whoa, how is he getting this game? The Blues are a hot team.
Yeah, it was a back-to-back with a one strong team and one weaker team, and they gave Skinner that start, right?
The hard game. So I would, if Skinner wins, I would keep going with him. I would look for a more of a challenge from Jack Campbell. Like it's a weird thing, Ryan. If you're playing again and you go, oh, okay, they're giving me the weak team game. You don't. Okay, it's a game we should win. So there's pressure in every game, but I would look to give Campbell if Stuart Skinner's winning, why not keep going with him and give Campbell a more of a challenge? I like that, the way Woodcroft did that at the beginning of the year. I just for his confidence going in and playing against a higher caliber of opposition, I would say might be a better situation for Jack Campbell.
Yeah. Interesting. I definitely think they need to go back to Skinner here, because even though there were some goals that we didn't love, I think that Stuart Skinner needs to be given the chance to bounce back from games that maybe aren't great for him. That's what you do with your starting goaltender. And I think right now he needs to be treated like the starter on this team, and that Campbell needs to get the other starts, and he needs to earn more starts from the backup position. And I think that's okay. And I think pressure's off Campbell a little bit here because Skinner's playing well, and he just needs to focus on his next start and try and make it a good one and certainly make the best of it. Right on, Gager. This was great. Hey, before I let you go, because coming up, we're going to chat with Arpon Basu, who, of course, covers the Montreal Canadiens. We had a conversation yesterday about Joel Edmundson as a potential trade target for the Edmonton Oilers. So Arpon and I are going to dive right into that. Before I let you go, though, what do you think? This is an experienced guy. He's been around, Stanley Cup experience, left shot guy. What do you think? Well, wasn't a great showing last night for him, but
I know. Well, as soon as that happened, I was like, oh my gosh, if this is long term, this is not good for the Oilers right now. But I really believe that it's something needed on the Oilers on the back end. They need that punishing guy that's everyone's God, I have to go up against this guy again. He cross checks me. There's not enough of that. Another guy to pull some other players into the fight and be a little bit more engaged physically. That's always a good thing. I would love it. Experienced guy, has a lot of success in the playoffs, knows what it's all about. I would definitely be looking at that if I were the Oilers for sure. That's a key piece to the puzzle to get to where you want to go.
All right, in-depth conversation right now with Arpon on Joel Edmundson, the potential that the Montreal Canadiens could potentially move him and what the acquisition cost is likely to be. Gager, thanks so much, buddy. We'll talk to you again soon.
Awesome, buddy. Take care.
All right, here's my conversation with Arpon Basu. All right, pleased to be joined now by my good friend from The Athletic, Arpon Basu, who is currently in an Uber making the, 40-minute trek out to the airport early this morning, Arpon. That's a quick turnaround and an ugly drive for you, my friend.
Yeah. It shocks me every time I come here how much empty space there is between the city and the airport, where they could have put an actual airport. But anyhow,
you know who appreciates it?
I love it here, though.
You know who appreciates it? The fine people of Red Deer. Because a town like that, to have an airport that size, like pretty darn close.
Absolutely.
People in Red Deer absolutely love it. Listen, I want to talk to you about Joel Edmundson in a second here. But first and foremost, you cover this Montreal Canadiens team every day, all the time. What did you make of their performance last night? What version of the Montreal Canadiens did the Edmonton Oilers beat last night, other than the undisciplined version?
Well, I mean, that's the main thing. That's been, that was a problem earlier in the season. It's a young team. That's to be expected. They'd kind of cleaned that up. Their penalty killing had actually been exceptional, and actually was exceptional in that game. I mean, when you give up 3 5-on-3s, to come out of that whole situation only down 3-1 and actually tie the game, the penalty killing was great. But yeah, they've made a bad habit. This might sound familiar for Edmonton fans, but they've made a bad habit of outscoring their mistakes, and they just couldn't do that in this game.
Yeah, fair enough. Didn't get much of a chance in that game to see Joel Edmundson play. We saw the penalty that he took. Didn't love it. A bit of a tough play there for Hyman, but he was penalized for it. But I want to talk to you specifically about this player, Arpon, because you and I had a conversation yesterday about him and the potential for maybe him to be a target for the Edmonton Oilers. And while we were having the conversation, I was thinking, man, I wish I was doing a podcast right now with you. So why not? Let's rehab that conversation now here on my podcast. So the Edmonton Oilers, in my opinion, are looking for a bigger, reasonably mobile, at his core, shut down, but decent puck-moving defenseman, ideally that has some playoff experience, some pedigree, brings some leadership and some spark into the room, that can play in your second pairing on the left side, which allows you to play Kulak down on the third pairing. So when you and I were talking about this yesterday, you brought up the great point that's, in so many ways. How many ways does Joel Edmundson fit that bill?
He checks every box. He really does. Maybe the mobile one is a bit debatable, but he's not as immobile as you would think he is. And this is the Canadiens are in an interesting situation, and really the way they've played this season, I think has forced management to think about how to handle this, because prior to this season, their plan was to add another first-round draft pick. Mm-hmm. How they were going to do that wasn't clear. They had, 3 guys who were coming up on expiring contracts: Kenny Dodonov, Jonathan Drouin, and Sean Monahan. Monahan's the one that might come closest to fetching one, but I doubt it. I don't think for a rental of of like him, I don't know if he'll get that done. But if you get 2 playoff runs with Joel Edmundson, the Canadiens might be in a position to go get that. So, but they're competitive right now. They're not out of a playoff chase, and they don't want to sabotage that. But if things go the way I expect them to go, and all the underlying numbers would suggest at some point there's going to be some regression with this team, I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Joel Edmundson would be available. But that's going to be the price tag, I would imagine, just because, seeing what Ben Sherratt fetched on the open market, the Canadiens are sitting with 2 first-round picks as a result of that trade right now in 2023. I would think the conversation would start there on Joel Edmundson, because he does bring a lot of value to that room on a young team. There's a lot of reasons to keep him. All the reasons that you just mentioned, the Oilers would want him, are reasons why they would think that he would help a developing group. Right. But he's really a playoff style player, so a playoff team makes a lot more sense for him.
And he's got the no trade clause too, I believe, right? I'm just looking on Cap Friendly here. And it's got the
but
NTC
I think
next to it. You think he would? Where do you think his head would be at?
He's a competitive guy. He wants to win. I don't think that would be much of an issue for him. I haven't actually talked to him about it, but it would be a situation where he would be presented with an opportunity to go and play in the playoffs and potentially another cup. I can't imagine that would be a huge problem in terms of lifting that.
It's not like he's a UFA where if you waive to go somewhere, hey, I'm going to go on a little playoff run here, and then I get to call my shot after. It's a 2-year commitment.
Exactly.
Like it's a playoffs and then another full year. So, and just for people, if you don't know, he's got another year left. It's a pretty reasonable $3.5 million. Talk to me about the role that he plays on the team, the quality of competition, and the minutes. Is this a legit second pairing defenseman in your mind on a good team?
Yeah, he is. And, he's shown it. I mean, it's, when the Canadiens made the Cup final, they had that big 4 on defense. It was him, Petrie, Shea Weber, Ben Sherratt. I mean, they ate all the minutes. They got all the difficult matchups. Those 4 guys killed penalties. And he was great. I mean, listen, he's not a flash and dash defenseman, but he doesn't make a whole lot of mistakes. And once he's in a playoff groove, he actually gets better. It's really he seems to be a guy who thrives on competitive situations and matchups. And it's unfortunate. I was actually really curious. His partner right now is Caden Gooley, and they were going to get a lot of McDavid and Draisaitl in that game, and you would have kind of seen the style of defending that he has. He's a hard player. I mean, that penalty on Hyman, that's a bad penalty, but Joel Edmundson does that 10, 15 times a game. He just happened to catch Hyman in the head, which is a clear penalty. But that's the style of defense. He's a punishing defender. He's the guy who takes cross-checking to the very limits of legality, but knows where that line is. And
that line changes in the playoffs, right? To your point.
Absolutely. And he thrives on that. That's as soon as that line moves, he's a more valuable player, because not every player can play like that. He not only does, he loves it.
The price tag is interesting. You talked about the jumping off point being a first round pick. Look at what some of the defensemen went for last year. There's not a lot of great comparables from last year. You mentioned Sherratt. Giordano went for a couple seconds and a third. Dermott a third. Hamonic a third. So I understand what you're saying about the starting point being a first. With the quality of the draft coming up, I wonder if Ken Holland would be willing to part with his first round pick. That's one thing he has been very hesitant to do, is move a first round pick. He's really stockpiled them and saved them and valued them. He got stung early in his tenure here. Remember, he moved a couple of picks for Andreas Athanasiou, a couple second round picks. We got really aggressive in that one trade deadline, and the Athanasiou thing turned around and bit them pretty hard. And so he's been hesitant to move that kind of a pick. Do you think that when it gets down to the 11th hour, and as these ones often do, prices tend to come down, but more on rentals than anything? So I think about Seattle last year and Soucy. There's lots of talk about him moving. At the end of the day, they didn't get their price. They kept him because they had him signed for another year. It wasn't a player they were going to risk losing for nothing. So I guess what I'm saying is if they don't get their first round pick, probably see them just hanging on to this guy.
Absolutely. They have no they're under no pressure to trade him. I mean, that's why the Monahan situation that I mentioned, maybe that's a case where if the market's just not there, you take what you can get and you move on. Edmondson's not that at all. Listen, it's not going to be if they trade at Joel Edmundson, which is still an if, because I don't think they will if they're within striking distance of a playoff spot, just because, you know, kind of nurturing that competitive spirit in that dressing room is something that this group is taking seriously, and trading Joel Edmundson if they're close would be a tough sell in that room, because it would cost them. But if they do decide to trade him and they don't get what they want, I mean, they need a guy like that. I mean, listen, look at the defense they put out yesterday, and that was, you know, there were 3 rookies on defense against the Oilers. They played with 4 rookies because Mike Matheson was out for a month and a half to start the season. This is a situation the Canadiens didn't want. They don't want their young defensemen drowning, and a guy like Joel Edmundson not only gives them minutes, but he gives those young defensemen a sounding board. He's a guy on the bench that's helping them develop. Like, he's very important to the Canadiens, but so is a first-round pick. And Ken Hughes has been clear that this is something he wants. He wants 3 first-round picks in this draft. What you mentioned about the quality of the draft class is what's going to make that difficult. You know, I think a lot of teams are going to be like, even if you're picking in the 20s, this is a year where you could get yourself a pretty good player in the 20s, unlike most years. So, so it's very possible the market's not there, that first round pick is not available. In which case, I'm convinced the Canadiens would just be like, well, either there's 2 ways of going about it. There's either you give me a former first round pick in terms of a prospect, and that can compensate for the lack of a first round pick in the deal, or the Canadiens just keep him. And frankly, depending on the quality of the prospect, I think the Canadiens would be more inclined to keep him if that first round pick's not there.
So the Oilers have a first round pick from a few years ago by the name of Xavier Bourgault, and he's been tied to Montreal previously. This, you know, French-Canadian player that obviously would be a great fit, lots of skill, and having a decent year in the American Hockey League, so there's been a tie-in there. I wonder, too, about Jesse Puljujarvi. What do you are they open for business in terms of taking on what would be considered a reclamation project of sorts? Puljujarvi is, you know, I think the days of being a top 6 forward have probably come and gone, or that expectation. But you watched him play last night. He plays hard, threw 8 hits, and disrupting out there, but overall makes too much money. Do you think they're open for business in terms of taking on some money and reclamation-style projects like they did with Monahan?
Yeah, I mean, I think in that case, like, you know, Bourgault and Puljujarvi are 2 different conversations, obviously.
Yes,
but I mean, you know, Puljujarvi, as someone who can even out the money to make it work for Edmonton, I mean, I think that would be appealing to this group, because they have a lot of confidence in this development staff that they've put together. You know, I mean, if you watch the Canadiens after a morning skate, they have a guy, Adam Nicholas, who's sort of their skills, the director of hockey development is his actual title, but he's basically a skills coach who works with the guys individually, and you know, the entire development infrastructure they have, plus the head coach they have, Martin St. Louis, who's also out there working with the scratches after a morning skate, which is a pretty rare sight in the NHL. They have a lot of confidence in these guys' ability to develop players. And, you know, I don't think Puljujarvi's development path is over. It's looking like it's plateaued. But I could see them thinking, like, okay, we get a prospect out of this. We get, say, a later round pick out of this, maybe a third or second on top of Bourgault, and you get Puljujarvi to even out the money. Well, you know, I think they would see Puljujarvi as someone that they could turn into an actual player. And I mean, look at, you know, the situation with Kirby Dach. I think it's completely different. Kirby Dach it clearly has a lot of development ahead of him, but they saw that as a real opportunity to take a player that another organization had failed to develop properly and do it properly. And so I'm not saying that they can necessarily do that with Puljujarvi. What I am saying is that they might think they can.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. And Puljujarvi had a decent night last night with Ken Hughes in the building and against the Montreal Canadiens. Last one for you here on Edmundson. The intangibles, the presence in the locker room. You described him yesterday as a guy that's not afraid to keep the people around him accountable. Expand on that.
Well, I mean, listen, he's, you know, you always hear GMs say, oh, what do you like about this guy? Well, he's won a cup, which I think is kind of kind of bunk most of the time. I mean, listen, if you just so happen to be on a team who won a cup, I don't know what that says about your own leadership skills or anything really about you individually. In Joel Edmundson's case, it really is something that is part of him. You know, like what the Blues did that year. He wasn't a top end player in terms of his impact on the ice, but in that room, he was highly respected, and you know, his style of game, his willingness to sacrifice and do all the things that are necessary to get to the playoff series is something that's highly respected to this day. You talk to players from that Blues team about Joel Edmundson, and they will talk your ear off. I mean, so he's the guy who, and you talk to any young player on the Canadiens today, they'll talk your ear off as well. Like, he has a really positive influence, and he brings that gravitas of someone who has not only won a Stanley Cup but contributed and is able to communicate that to his teammates when they're not doing enough of what's needed in the playoffs to get through.
And I mean, you certainly welcome that experience from a guy like that. He can play the game a little rough and tumble too, which the Oilers need more of in their lineup. A lot of reasons why this is potentially a fit, but a lot of reasons why the Montreal Canadiens would probably want to hang on to this player as well. It's going to be fun to see what happens as things progress over the next month or two. Arpon, thank you, my friend. I really appreciate you jumping on here.
My pleasure. I'm not even at the airport yet.
Oh, man. I wasn't able to keep you busy for your whole ride.
Just, you know, I'm approaching the fine city of Leduc right now.
Right on, buddy. Well, listen, safe travels. Get home to that beautiful family, and we will talk to you again here real soon.
All right, take care, buddy.
All right, that is Arpon Basu. Fantastic writer with The Athletic and a good friend. Thrilled that he was able to join us here on Got Your Back. That's going to wrap up this short shift edition, folks. Thank you so much for your downloads and your subscriptions. We appreciate it immensely. Hey, leave us a review on iTunes. Want to know what you think? Good, bad, indifferent? Take a shot at me. Whatever you got to do, we want to hear from you here on Got Your Back. So don't be shy about leaving us a review. Big thanks as always to our sponsors, Mid-City Construction Management, and of course, our good friends at Weiss Johnson. Hey, if you're an NFL fan, enjoy the games today. If not, hope this gave you your hockey fix on a Sunday. Plenty of podcasts coming your way this upcoming week. Oilers and Washington Capitals set to go. Ovies in town on Monday. Cheers, folks.